Good afternoon. My name is Sam Sherpa, and today we're going to be talking about the IAM, which is essentially the Identity and Access Management. This is specifically for the AWS, and let's get started. So the IAM has three different sections, which is the root account, the users, and the groups that are connected to the users. Now the root account is created by default, but it shouldn't be used because you are supposedly assigning permissions to the users, and you can use your make different users, and you can use them instead of your root account so that it's even more secure. And groups can also be utilized so that if you have other coworkers or partners, you can actually assign them permissions with the groups as well. Now, if a person is in multiple groups, he is going to, or they are going to inherit all of the permissions that all the groups have. So he will get, the permissions will essentially stack upon each other. But they don't have to, remember. And going on to the IAM permissions, users or groups can, they can have policies, and these policies are essentially permissions that the root account is assigning to the users. And with these policies, you should always think of applying the least privilege principle. The reason why is because if you have a organization and everyone has the highest privilege or a super high privilege, it wouldn't make any sense. The security is going to be extremely weak. Now, you need to make sure that every single person is applying or has the least privilege principle, because they only need to use the necessary privileges that you give them. And the structures that the IAM policies has are the versions, the IDs, and the statements. And the statements has all the different subcategories such as principles, actions, and resources, which we don't necessarily need to get into. However, the IAM is super it could be super powerful, and that's why you need to have a strong password so that no one is able to access them. And if you have a stronger password, you have a higher security, but you can also make sure that even if they get the password, you can actually have a multi-factor authentication, the MFA, so that once you combine those two, you will get a successful login. However, if someone were to get your password, you don't have to worry about it because you have the multi-factor authentication, which you can put it on your phone. Now, there are other devices that has the multi-factor authentication, but you don't really need to use that. You could just use your phone, get like an app called Dual Mobile, things like that. It's pretty simple and very effective. And there are multiple ways for the user to actually access the AWS. Three particular ways are the AWS Management Console, the AWS Command Line Interface, and the AWS Software Development Kit. Now, the AWS Management Console is protected by the password and the multi-factor authentication. However, the Command Line Interface and the Software Development Kit are actually protected by these new password keys called access keys. And access keys are made in the AWS Management Console, which is automatically generated, but they are secret. They're meant to be a secret because you shouldn't be handing them out like it's just you shouldn't be handing it out like currency, like paper. It should be kept a secret, and it's essentially the username and password, which the username is the key ID, and the password is the secret access key. Now, you might be asking yourself, what is the AWS Command Line Interface? Well, the AWS Command Line Interface is essentially a tool that helps you interact with AWS services through the command prompt or the command shell. And it gives you direct access of all the services that AWS has to provide. And the cool thing is that it's open source. Now, the next thing is we did mention the next possible way to get into the AWS was the software development kit. And the software development kit is essentially, it's the set of libraries that have programming languages, and essentially it helps you utilize them without having to worry about them, such as JavaScript, Python, Java, Go, all these different languages. And the IAM also has roles for specific services. So you can actually assign these IAMs to specific services, such as if we go to the AWS EC2 instance, we can actually see that, we can utilize the Amazon EC2 and provide the necessary privileges for your instance. And there are also security tools for the IAM, which is for the best practices. There's also the IAM credentials report. There's the IAM access advisor, and these are things that will either help you revise your policies or make a report for your account's users and various statuses. And going over to this page, they have the IAM guidelines and the best practices. So for the best practices, you should really make sure that you don't use the root account. Remember, root account is just so that you can assign users different access keys and passwords and whatnot. Okay, never use the root account. Always use the user's account, essentially. Make sure you create a strong password. Use multi-factor authentication, and you can even assign roles to give permissions. And don't forget, we also have to have the least privilege policies. We can't forget about that. And we can also utilize the access keys for the CLI or the SDK, and for those you should never want to share them. Now, going into the responsibility model for the IAM, it's the same page that I showed you in the previous video, but I would like to state that the AWS is focusing on the infrastructure, the compliance validation, and the configuration and vulnerability of the analysis, which would essentially mean that they're working on the infrastructure of the cloud and how they are able to have compliance with various other countries or whatnot. You, however, have to worry about the users, groups, etc. Make sure everything has the security, proper password, multi-factor authentications for the accounts. Make sure they have the proper access keys. Make sure the people aren't just handing out access keys to other people, and you are able to apply those to the users, which could be in groups and whatnot. So the final thing that I want to go over once again is just make sure that the IAM has the users, the groups, the policies, and the roles for the IAM, which remember can be applied to the EC2 instances and whatnot. And that's essentially everything. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day.